Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
So what I'm asking Congress to do is to give us a third option, which we have been requesting since last year, the legal authority to detain and promptly remove families together as a unit. We have to be able to do this. This is the only solution to the border crisis. We have to stop child smuggling. This is the way to do it. And ultimately, we have to have a real border, not judges. Thousands and thousands of judges they want to hire. Who are these people? When we vet a single federal judge, it goes through a big process. Everybody that's ever met her or him, they come, they complain, they don't complain, they say he's brilliant, she's brilliant, he's not smart enough to be a judge. Now we're hiring thousands and thousands. What country does this?
Okay, that's a lie. We have 335 immigration judges in this country. Thousands and thousands. And he's characterizing them as federal court judges, criminal court judges. This is immigration court. We have 335 of them, and the funding for immigration courts has increased only modestly over the years. And the funding and the resources for enforcement, if he's interested in it, which he's not, he's interested in using this issue. He's interested in cruelty. Cruelty actually works. I mean, Stephen Miller, this white supremacist, who I always confuse with Jason Miller, who's, the father of a baby outside of his marriage while still married to his current wife in a custody battle with the paramour because he wants her baby to be raised by his wife who he cheated on. You could see how all the Millers in the around Trump get confusing. No, but the really disgusting one is Stephen Miller. He's the white supremacist, okay? And Stephen Miller is the person he was quoted as saying, we don't see this as an impediment. We don't see this as, we see this kidnapping thing. We see this whole thing as a feature of the immigration policy that Trump laid out. A feature. They want the Colt 45 people, they want them to insist that people who are literally fleeing violence and death squads and, lunatic governments and gang violence and domestic violence and being beaten and killed or children being recruited. The police in these countries, they're the drug dealers. You understand this? You understand this? Okay, the cartels can't operate without the police, and the police are actually, down with this. Their whole freaking the northern triangle of Central America is so corrupt. If you want to talk about regime change, we need regime change, that's for sure, and so do these three countries, because these three countries are being ruled by freaking dictators, including this one. When you see kidnapping babies as a feature of your immigration policy, and then you blame everybody else for this policy that you dreamt up as a get out the vote effort. I mean, that's what Stephen Miller said. That's what he said. He used to work for Jeff Sessions. He made his name on Capitol Hill because he fought against the bipartisan immigration bill. You remember the Gang of Eight and the McCain thing and all that? And we almost got, and then, back in the day, you had Boner refused, it passed the Senate, and Boner refused to even introduce it for a vote. And, the Speaker of the House gets to decide what goes on the floor. And Boner, after all that work that they did, wouldn't even introduce it. And how dare this president blame this on the Democrats? This effort to sink the bipartisan legislation that we had the last time around was sunk by Jeff Sessions and this Stephen Miller dude. And that's where he got his credentials as a true blue ideologue. That's how he secured his place. He is what they call an avowed restrictionist. He thinks that immigration was the winning thing for his boss. And so he said, He said this is why Donald Trump got elected. You knew what you were getting. And he said, he was talking to the New York Times, and he framed his theory about why do this. He said, well, we can say we have one party in favor of open borders and one party that wants to secure the border. And all day long, the American people are going to side with the party that wants to secure the border. And not by a little bit, not 55-45 or 60-40 or 70-30 or 80-20. I'm talking 90-10 on that. And so this cruelty of ripping young children from the arms of asylum seekers, which are people who haven't broken any law, and putting them in these dystopian detention centers, he says, the public outrage and the anger, like forced family separation, they're a feature, not a bug of the policy. A feature, not a bug of the foreign policy. These are disgusting people. This is a dictator. He's also, the one that worked with Steve Bannon to do the Muslim ban on 7 majority. He said that he wanted to see the snowflakes show up at airports and riot. And when people were outraged and they did show up he goes, mission accomplished. These are perpetual outragers. These are trolls. We have a baby as president of the United States. We literally have a juvenile delinquent as president of the United States. A guy who, by the way, was separated from his parents at 13. His parents sent him away, to a military-themed school. I mean, this is unbelievable. I got to tell you, and that's why when you ask Cult 45, because they're so susceptible to all this propaganda, all this BS, all this horrible, messaging. They just eat it up. They just eat it up, and they just say, "Well, of course we have to kidnap babies."
At Nana D's Diner in Mesa, Arizona, you can find plenty of good food. What you won't find, especially among Trump fans, is sympathy for immigrant families separated at the border.
These people that we have coming across the border illegally are breaking the rules. Oh, I have no feelings for them at all.
No feelings.
Despite the images of children torn from their parents or the sounds of kids crying in a detention center, folks here back the president completely.
It's not about Mexicans. That's what everybody is so angry about. It's not. I don't care if you're from Canada. I don't care if you're from where. You just can't come into this state and reap. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I don't know how to explain.
You think that people are living off of the state but not doing it legally?
Absolutely. And I think it's bull.
You hear a lot of anger and a lot of the president's own arguments, especially that many of the immigrants are actually criminals posing as parents.
Oh my God.
Now, when you have a bad guy coming across, kidnapping a kid and trying to come across, I don't buy that.
How many of these do you think could be bad guys?
I don't really know, but there's a lot of people being hurt by bad guys coming into this country. A lot of people.
Actually, that isn't true, but it is what these Trump voters believe. Madeleine Carroll doesn't like CNN, and she doesn't like the way the media, she says, is trying to make her feel guilty.
Quit trying to make us feel teary-eyed for the children. Yes, I love children a great deal, but to me, it's up to the parents to do things rightfully and legally.
You support the president 100%.
Correct.
Okay, well, take a brief moment from eating and listen to me. Asking for asylum is completely legal. And parents making the ultimate sacrifice of leaving everything they've ever known to trek 2,000 miles with a baby on their back or a baby in their arms or a baby in their belly or children in tow to escape a freaking autocratic government that is essentially a narco state for the enrichment of the 1% of that country is the right thing to do. And it's legal. They buy into this crap. I'm telling you, this Cult 45. I swear to God.
What's really dangerous, Randy, like what they were verbalizing is there's no middle ground. It's either they're coming over and taking our babies and leaving with them, or we separate their babies. No middle ground. That's that. And there's a lot of nuance.
Well, there's no nuance. People are coming here with their children to escape violence. That is not something that's nuanced. When a guy comes and his eye has been gouged out of his head and he's got scars all over his body and his face is cut, his ear is hanging off, and it's been sewn back on. I mean, you could go look at that video on theatlantic.com, okay? And they deny him asylum because he's not fleeing for his life. I mean, who's making these freaky decisions? Who's doing that? And that's just a guy that came, okay? Young kid. I mean, he was like maybe 18, 19 years old. But his mother and his younger brother, they're with him because they're all trying to flee this narco state. Now, you want to do something meaningful? Get a summit together. If he's so strong, he can meet with Kim Jong-un, right? He can meet with another fucking human rights abuser, okay? Another guy who has his people raped. Another guy who puts his people in gulags. Another guy who, sentences people to hard labor or sends them off to re-education camp. And Trump loves that. He wants his people to sit up and take notice the way that Kim Jong-un's people sit up and take notice. I mean, that's what's going on south of the border. That's what goes on in Guatemala. That's what goes on in Honduras. That's what goes on in Salvador, especially. I mean, honest to God, have yourself a summit. Go figure it out. Go be an election watcher and make sure they have free and fair elections. Do something down there. Instead of punishing the people who are truly making the sacrifice, truly facing that horrible choice. Do we die here together or do we try to go to the United States and beg for our freedom? These people are being terrorized down there. They're so sick. And he just lies.
Now, can you imagine the graft that must take place? You're all small business owners. So I know you can't imagine a thing like that would happen. But here's a guy, they say, could you please be a judge? Come on, get it. They line up to be a judge. It's horrible.
He is accusing people who don't have any job in any no position of authority in our system. They haven't been vetted. They haven't been anything. And he's already accusing them. His first thought was, well, if we hire more judges to adjudicate these asylum claims or to, because that's what this is, they will take graft. They will take, because Donald Trump thinks that America is a third world nation. I swear to God, it was his first thought.
Can you imagine the graft that must take place? You're all small business owners. So I know you can't imagine a thing like that would happen.
Graft?
But here's a guy, they say, could you please be a judge? Come on, get it. They line up to be a judge. It's horrible. We don't want judges. We want security on the border. We don't want people coming in. We want them to come in through a legal process like everybody else that's waiting to come in to our country. And it got so crazy that all of these thousands, we now have thousands of judges, border judges, thousands and thousands. And by the way, when we release the people, they never come back to the judge anyway. They're gone. They're in your system. That's it. If they're good, that's great. And if they're bad, you'll have killings, you'll have murders, you'll have this, you'll have that, you'll have crime. You'll have crime.
Again, we only have 335 immigration judges. They don't take graft. We don't have thousands and thousands of dirty judges sitting on our benches. I mean, this is just bizarre. And only 3% come back. Let's look at the numbers from the Justice Department, okay? Let's look at the Justice Department's Yearbook of Immigration Statistics from fiscal year 2016, the most recent year for which data is available. There were 137,875 cases. The number of cases decided in absentia was between 11 and 25%, which means 90% of the people showed up for their hearings. He just lies. He just freaking can't help himself. He just lies. Now, the legislative assistant at the White House, Mark Short, who's usually sent out on the TV shows, usually to Fox, he said the same thing on Monday. It's inaccurate. And, by the way, we pulled a little interview. This is going to make you sick. We pulled a little interview with we don't even have a director of ICE, okay? We don't even have a director. Nobody has been named or confirmed. We have an acting director of ICE. This guy is such a mushmouth. It's so hard to understand what he's saying, but he just made crap up. Then finally, during the interview, it was an interview with Wolf Blitzer, he was asked whether or not this is considered, this statute that he keeps invoking, this acting director of ICE, his name is Tom Homan, whether this was a crime or a misdemeanor, whether this was a federal prosecution or this was a civil case with a Class B misdemeanor, like running a stop sign.
The parents are making a choice. They're choosing, rather than entering through a port of entry where they won't be separated, they are taking it upon themselves to enter illegally and have their children taken away. So if anybody's to blame here, it's the parents who made a decision, I'm going to break the law rather than
But
going
if you
to a
say
port
you
of
have
entry.
discretion, why do you charge everyone crossing the border?
Why should someone, because you're illegal alien, you get to commit a crime, you get a pass? How many U.S. citizens get a pass when they commit a crime? I mean, we need to hold these people accountable. If you can't, I can't blame.
Can I just tell you that if I get a traffic ticket, I have the option of going to comedy court. Right? You get to go to comedy class instead of paying the fine. Yeah, okay. So how many Americans have had their children taken away for a misdemeanor? How many people have gotten a traffic ticket and they saw that you had a baby in a car seat and they took that baby pending your court date? How many Americans? And by the way, just so you know, once you're in the United States, the Constitution applies to you. Well, but they're not citizens. You don't have to be a citizen. If you're in our borders, the Constitution is the governing document.
Anybody who want to be a part of the greatest country on earth, Wolf, but you can't want to be a part of the greatest country on earth and not respect its laws.
But you just said you do have discretion.
We absolutely do have discretion. But I'm saying there shouldn't be a different set of rules because you're an illegal alien. When I was a police officer in New York, I arrested parents. I took parents out of a home for domestic violence. I separated that father from his child. It was sad. The child cried. But you know what? They got separated because the parent got charged with a crime.
Oh, wait a minute. So people coming here asking for asylum, which is a misdemeanor violation, should be compared to abusive fathers who beat their children, which is a crime? This is our law enforcement officer, okay? This is the acting director of ICE. Seriously, dude.
Things happening here.
I'm a little confused on when somebody is committing a crime. You say if somebody is seeking asylum here in the United States, they have to go to an official port of entry. But we did some checking. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the website, it says that you can apply for asylum if you are at a port, an official port of entry, or and I'm quoting now, in the United States.
Hello.
You can apply for asylum if you're in the United States. So some of these people, they cross illegally, but they're in the United States. Why can't they apply for asylum?
It's simple. 8 U.S.C. 1325, illegal entry in the United States, it's a crime. It's a misdemeanor first offense, second offense a felony.
But if they're seeking asylum, is that still a crime if they're crossing the border illegally?
You're clouding the issue. The issue is if you don't want to be separated from your child, come through a port of entry. We have been clear on that.
All right, so let me just clarify something else, because you just said it's a misdemeanor if they do that. You're separating mothers and their children over a misdemeanor?
We're separating mothers and their children because they've chose to violate the crime.
But you just said it was a misdemeanor.
The first offense is a misdemeanor.
Okay, so for a misdemeanor, you're seperating parents from their kids?
We're enforcing the law. We're enforcing law against illegal aliens.
But you have discretion.
We're enforcing laws against illegal aliens just like we enforce them against U.S. citizens.
But it's just a misdemeanor, and you don't have to do it if you have discretion. And it wasn't done during the Obama administration or the Bush administration. It's only been done now in the last couple of months during the Trump administration.
We can go back and forth. They don't have to commit a misdemeanor. They can come to a port of entry.
If these people are being tortured or being threatened with death, and they seek entry into the United States under asylum, you have to understand what they're going through.
And that's a false statement right there, Wolf, because the immigration courts in the last year and a half have said 80%, up to 80% of these cases are frivolous. These people are up here committing fraud. They're being coached what to say. They lose their cases. So to say they're escaping fear and persecution is just that's factually wrong.
Because some of your colleagues have used that 80% number, and we've done some checking on that. and let me give you the numbers. This is the Justice Department numbers. The most recent numbers we have from the Justice Department, much lower, about 25% in 2016. It was between 11 and 28% of people who didn't show up from 2012 to 2016. That's according to the annual Justice Department Yearbook of Immigration Statistics.
They just lie. They just sit there and lie. He quotes a statute, which is a misdemeanor statute, and then when he's asked, well, you just said this is a misdemeanor, but you compared it to felony child abuse. You compared it to beating a child, and that's your interpretation of this misdemeanor statute, and so you feel that it's equal, and you should take the children away from the parents pending their adjudication hearing on a misdemeanor violation. And he says, you're clouding the issue. He also says, well, they're seeking asylum, that there's no crime there at all. Well, only if they come through a port of entry. Well, no. Once they're in the United States, they can make a claim of asylum. Well, I want to take their children. This is the acting director of a giant government agency called ICE. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.